So the thing we're going to have a segment on this. Mainly, we avoided talking about it because it's so divisive.
Yeah.
We talked about it before, and we had an argument over it like a year ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of the information that's been released has thus changed. So has my stance on how I viewed this particular case. And all I said on Twitter was, this is a very divisive case. I mean, obviously we're already divided, but it's fomenting even more division, and it's really not going to change anything in the grand scheme of things. And I got called a white supremacist. I got called just for saying that, even though I personally have been of the belief that Kyle should be getting some sort of time, some sort of I was advocating manslaughter or some sort of time behind bars because of what he did. Now I don't see him as a victim. I don't see him as innocent. I based on the things we have seen, and we're not going to discuss the trial because that's been discussed ad nauseum. You guys have all seen it. Yeah. People have made videos of it. We're not going to discuss that, but we are going to discuss the verdict. And the verdict stated that Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty on all charges in the Kenosha shootings. Now, I think all the charges were murder. Yeah. And murder is difficult to prove because you have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. And I knew that wasn't going to happen. So, based on the videos that were released that weren't edited, because what happened is mainstream media released edited videos that made it look like he was persecuting people when in reality he was being persecuted in the beginning. And that's something that a lot of people had to retract, including TYT, who had to make a correction. What I'm saying is I'm not going to go over the intricacies of the case, but I just want to say, a lot of things were misled by the media, which led a lot of people to have a belief that was based on things that didn't happen. And there's just pull back and forth that I feel like when all this is happening around the world, when we're talking about what's happening in Nicaragua, we're talking about what we're going to be talking about with Build Back Better, this case seems like such a distraction.
Well, that's what I'm about to say. You talk about how divisive it is. I agree, but it's also a major distraction. We're not paying attention to anything else that's going around. We're paying attention to this one situation. And I don't want to say death should be, treaded lightly over here. It's a very serious thing. There are 2 people who died, a 3rd person that was seriously injured. But, the way this is kind of just taken over everybody's, it's been weaponized, but it's taken everybody's mindset. We see the thought police all over this kind of, these kind of things. So we're going to get more into that Monday. But yes, it is breaking news. Kyle Rittenhouse has been found not guilty on all 5 charges, fam. So I'm holding my fingers, hoping that there's not craziness in the streets.
Well, and that's the thing. I still have something to say about this. When I say that this is divisive and that people should have stopped talking about it so heavily, I wasn't trying to tell people what to do. I was simply trying to say that there are other things happening that we're ignoring because of this trial, and that it's fomenting a divide that's already there, and that it's made to do that. The media lives off of this. You saw people like what's his name? The Republican guy who wants to hire him as an intern.
Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, Matt Gaetz. This is what the Republicans and Democrats do. They feed off this culture warfare, right? Yeah. That nothing changes. The justice system has been unjust for a long time. Now, what I do want to say is that even if you can argue Kyle Rittenhouse deserved self-defense based on the evidence, and looking at the evidence, you can argue that. Any lawyer would tell you the same thing. But people are looking at this through a very emotional lens, and I understand that, because the reason people were protesting isn't discussed. People were protesting because of police brutality. Yeah. So Kyle represented somebody that wanted to be a pro-cop. He's on the side of the cops. He thin blue line everywhere. So that's obviously going to trigger people. It's going to be like, well, this guy who is pro-police, he's a white guy, he got away with this. And that isn't always the case. If we took Kyle and changed him to be a black man, or change him to be an anti-establishment guy, would things have been different? Probably. I can say that things likely would have been different because of the system that we're in. He has a benefit, and that's undeniable. And if you're discussing this case, you should mention that. But at the end of the day, people are going to be arguing about the intricacies of this case, and I think it's important that we don't lose sight and cancel people and try to dismiss people because they have a different opinion. Yeah. So I think it's important to hear what other people are saying and not just call them white supremacists. For example, Jimmy got a lot of pushback because of what he was stating. Now, I wouldn't have necessarily stated it like Jimmy did, and I didn't agree with 100% of the analysis he gave, but he was actually factually speaking about what the trial was and the things that were happening, but I always think it's important to point out that had the circumstances been different and Kyle been somebody else, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Maybe he would have been dead. You know what I mean? And I think those are things that are important to highlight. And people are angry because there's injustice and they want to make Kyle a representation of the revenge to get justice. And that's just not going to happen. If you want to fight the power, we have to fight the people who make the laws. We have to fight the people who are the state agencies that are trying to make this country a police state, that are trying to take away people's guns, that are trying to impose mandates. That's really who's in power here. He's just a symptom of everything else.
And we've also seen a lot of practices and a lot of things coming to fruition now. When you talk about January 6th, right, a lot of people like ourselves indicate that there was a lot of inside forces there, like FBI and whatnot. Obviously, the Republicans start blaming Antifa and whatnot. Right. But we smelt a lot of funny businesses. As we're seeing it play to light, there's a lot of funny businesses. We've shown plenty of videos where Black Lives Matter, the organizers, don't advocate for violence. They stop that kind of stuff. We've seen videos in LA where people were trying to break into a Walgreens or whatever, and the people from Black Lives Matter were saying, stop, don't do this, don't do this. And that's what they're all about. However, the media spins it like it's Black Lives Matter itself doing that. Then you have the car dealership, the private car dealership, going up in flames in Wisconsin. And when we saw that, I'm like, oh shit, this is going to cause problems and stuff like that. Well, I would bet my left pinky that Black Lives Matter had nothing to do with that. You know what I'm saying? But yet, the mainstream media thrusted that upon, especially on Fox News. Look what Black Lives Matter and Antifa is doing, whatnot. Which kind of egged people on, like Kyle, to grab a gun and go down there in the first place. So this is all media-induced, whatnot. We have to look at those things and say, what are they doing to us? Who's trying to pit us against each other? And this was the perfect example of them pitting us against each other. We did see some good signs where Black Lives Matter people and some of the Kyle Rittenhouse supporters were sharing pizza and talking, sharing shirts, and then somebody came in, started a fight right after it, whatnot. Yeah. It's sad, but at least seeing those nuggets, those moments, the Black Fathers Matter. A gentleman took off the shirt, gave it to one of the Kyle Rittenhouse supporters. He put it on. So hopefully we're seeing more of that. I shared the Jim Brewer situation. I don't know either, fam, but I'm praying for that. I know.
It really it's just, the fact that, somebody like me who's obviously not a white supremacist is getting called a white supremacist it just shows you the reactionary toxicity of a lot of the emotional tantrum left. I don't know what else to call them. They push people away. You create more people that are against your cause when you react like that. And I'm with you. I think he should have received some sort of sentencing. Yeah. But, you don't even get to say that. The reality is the justice system applies differently depending on how much money you have and also depending on what color your skin is. And that's something that's intrinsic in the justice system. You want to change that? Kyle Rittenhouse is not going to change that, whether he was locked up forever. And if we don't want justice for people we don't like, we don't want justice at all. Would it be just to have him locked up forever? Because that's what I hear people say. Lock him up and throw away the key. Since when did the left become so carceral? Yeah. I wish we had a system of rehabilitation and instead of a system of imprisonment. And that applies to everybody, even people I don't like. A lot of these people were cheering when Ashley Babbitt was shot. I think that's wrong too. I think if you're gonna call what happened in Kenosha a riot, then you have to call what happened on January 6th a riot. If you're gonna call that an insurrection, it's not an insurrection. So at the end of the day, I think we need to stop being driven by this propaganda narrative management that's out there and start having discussions with people in a calm way, understanding there's definitely going to be people that disagree with you. That doesn't mean that you have to throw them away because of their disagreement. And this case is it's just been ridiculously divisive, and I'm so glad it's over.
I've gotten thrown away. I've gotten blocked from people on Twitter for sharing my opinions. Do you think that Kyle Rittenhouse can can make the best of this, whatnot? A lot of people assume that he's going to kind of just digress back to his right-wing Second Amendment kind of ways. But do you think with this experience he went through being a young person that he can find some way to build bridges himself, maybe come talk about the situation, how he regrets taking lives? Do you think there's redemption for Kyle Rittenhouse? Because I don't think a lot of people are even thinking about that.
No, they're not thinking. But I have a hard time thinking there would be because he got everything that he asked for.
But he got scared shitless. He was up there for several times. He thought they might lock him up and throw away the key. You know what I'm saying? You can see the emotion from the kid so many times there. Because here's the thing, he's just a kid too.
Yeah, he's just
a fucking kid.
But he's just a kid that's being exploited for a cultural narrative with people like Matt Gaetz saying they want to hire him as an intern. So I have a hard time thinking he wouldn't go down that route, which is my annoyance of it. It's a gigantic circus. Meanwhile, a lot of things are happening, like what I just mentioned with Nicaragua, like a lot of things with the COVID narrative, and what we're going to talk about now with Build Back Better. Yeah. So I have a hard time thinking that that's going to happen, Pasta. I think it's a very optimistic view.
We'll see. I'm always hoping for the best. I'm always hoping to see something because if we keep going down the road we're going, fam, it's lights out. I don't know what's going to happen to us. Yeah. You know, we're just pitted against each other so much. I'm scared to see the future of this.
People are calling for more riots and stuff. And my thing to that is, if you're going to riot for this thing, why aren't you rioting for the fact that we don't have health care? Why aren't you rioting for the fact that we have fascistic mandates coming? Why aren't you rioting for the fact that they are literally giving gigantic tax cuts to the 1%? Again, why aren't you rioting for the fact that the working class is pretty much just left out for dead? We have a housing crisis. We have a homelessness crisis. Why doesn't that make you get off your chair and riot? Yeah. Why does it people are putting all their anger on this person when this person isn't going to change anything? You have to go after the people in power, and we cannot do that if we're so divided. So that's really what I see in America. People are so divided, whereas people in the global South, they've come together and are fighting back. So
yeah.